You only need to open a newspaper to see the desperate measures some people are going to have to go to in order to survive the recession.
Well, that's something our next guest knows all too well, as she was forced to go from mild-mannered antiques dealer to dominatrix just so that she could pay her bills. And Tallulah Devere joins us now. Welcome to you.
Hello.
So we need to explain the journey of how that happened to you. And you right at the very beginning, in your 20s, you moved to London. You were studying to be a veterinary nurse. You met your husband. He was a leading photographer. You married. You said that back then life was bliss, really. You went on to have 2 children, and you were a housewife and very happy to be so, and that was the role that you had. And a few years later, you decided that you wanted to have your own business.
That's
and
right.
amongst other things, the antique business was something that you decided that you were going to do. And this was really the catalyst of where it all started to go slightly wrong. And as your attention was put into the business, then your marriage suffered, and that ended up breaking up.
Yes.
So you go it alone, and it's bad timing, really, because at the same time as you're now putting all of your energies into this business, recession hits.
That's right.
So what happened?
Well, I had bailiffs at the door. I'd remortgaged on my house, which I now know was a pretty stupid thing to do, but I went along with it, and I guess it was just an accumulation of things, and the final straw was when I had the financial advisor from the mortgage company come out, and he said in no uncertain terms, you know, if you don't come up with some money, you're going to be evicted or repossessed. And he made a little comment that why didn't I go on the game? And I was a bit shocked. Yes.
As you would be.
Yes, didn't expect it from an advisor.
No.
That's not what you're expecting to be advised about.
No,
is
quite.
It, really?
No. Anyway, I was very embarrassed at the time, and I remember changing the subject and trying to get back to the matters. And after he left, I realised there was no way I could raise the money. I mean, I had huge arrears, plus the mortgage company wanted me to make extra payments.
Yeah.
In other words, an extra £200 a month.
And also this seed is sown in your mind
Right,
now. And so
absolutely.
what started off as a bit of a shock and a bit of a...
Yeah.
What are you talking
Made
about?
me think.
Now you're thinking, well, hang on a minute. This is
What sort of a person were you before that? Were you adventurous?
I was always a little headstrong, yes. I mean, my mother would say that, but I was sensible and quite cautious.
Because it's one thing if you've got someone there who's advising you financially, who offers you that piece of advice.
Yes.
It's a big step, and you must have been pretty financially desperate not
Absolutely.
to have slammed the door and gone, I can't believe it, that's outrageous, I'm going to complain, to actually, that might be worth a thought.
Well, I think that's all those things that went through my mind. But the final thing made me realise I had no choice was the night we had no gas and electric, because prior to that we'd had the card and key meters installed, but that's all very well, but when you haven't got a few quid to even put in, you're sitting in the dark, no heat.
Well, you didn't. You decided that that you would take that advice.
Yep.
And this was not where you are now, which is a whole different part of,
Right,
of the
yeah.
industry, which we'll come to in a moment. I mean, this was actually becoming a prostitute.
Absolutely. I hate that word,
Yeah.
but that's what I was.
So you decided that this was the way you were going to try and get yourself out of the dire
Yes.
straits that you and your family had found yourself into. And a lot of people, I think, would be surprised but could understand that. What was it like the first time? Because your boyfriend drove you to the house.
Yes,
didn't
I mean, we both discussed it, and I know he wasn't happy about it, but I think I more or less said to him, I don't think we have much choice. I wasn't prepared to lose my home.
But you say that if he had said at that stage, do you know what? Let's not go through this.
Yeah.
Then you'd have backed out.
I may have said no. That okay, let's go home.
Yeah. But you did go through with
I
it.
did,
And then you
indeed.
say there was drove you to a gentleman in his 60s, and in fact, it was okay.
He was quite pleasant.
Yeah.
I was fortunate. He wasn't a very demanding gentleman. He was quite charming, and it wasn't too unpleasant.
But this wasn't the sort of... This wasn't belle de jour, was it? I mean, the way that...
Absolutely not.
It was real and
Very
at
real.
times not nice for you. And...
Yes, at times some very unsavoury people pass your way. And no, it's far from belle de jour.
Well, you rented a flat. You employed two other girls.
Yes, I did.
And you have said, you certainly said to us that you hated the punters.
Well, I didn't hate the punters. I hated having to have sex with a man that I didn't desire.
And you also didn't like the fact that they would say to you, "How can I please you?"
Oh, yes. I mean, because for me, the act had to be just... It was about him pleasing himself.
You said to one man, "You've already pleased me. You've given me your money. Now get out."
Quite. I mean, yes. It didn't do much for his... yeah.
So how did this then move on from being a prostitute to then going down the sort of dominatrix route?
OK. I had a rather charming old gentleman that used to turn up in a Bentley. And he didn't want sexual services, but he liked a little spank on the bottom.
Right.
And after several occasions of him visiting, we got on extremely well. He said, "My dear," he said, "you're such a little actress." He said, "I suggest you become a dominatrix." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Well, you're doing it now, aren't you?" And I knew very little about domination. And after he left, I thought, oh, yes, I knew, I'd heard about it. And decided that particular evening to go online and have a look at some free, you know, you get little previews of these kind of things.
Well, when you discovered that world and you bought the kit that goes with it, of which there is all sorts of stuff, endless stuff. So when you looked at that world, what did you think about it?
Well, I was very naive. I mean, the particular clip I looked at was quite mild, and I thought, oh, I can do that. But I soon found out that there were so many different things that were expected from a dominatrix. Obviously, I can't go into that today, but you have to treat each punter or client, whatever you want to call him, you have to treat him individually. No two want the same thing. And that's quite difficult to judge.
And isn't it until you sort of get used to it, a bit disconcerting to have... And you say that there are MPs, there are footballers, there are all sorts of people that across the spectrum who come in and expect you to, you know, sort of mistreat them in some way.
Yes, or they may want to be an adult baby for a little period of time. Yes. So
wow. But for you, far easier than actually having to perform sex with somebody who you, like you said, you didn't desire.
Absolutely.
And what do you think of the men?
I don't want to stand in judgment of any of my
ex-clients, because you don't do it anymore.
Absolutely. Ex-customers. It's a difficult one. I liked a lot of my customers, but some I used to think, oh gosh, I think you need to see a psychiatrist. You need a bit of help.
Wow.
You've written the true story of prostitution, yours truly, Tallulah Devere, and you do say be very careful, because you can to anyone who is thinking about pursuing the same route, there are some very dangerous false impressions that you could
absolutely. Yes.
Be careful. And thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you.
Absolutely fascinating.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.